Can I be happy in a marriage without sex? Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com, the podcast where I help good men overcome pain and loneliness in their lives. I've talked about this before. You're not wrong for wanting sex in your marriage. You're not broken. You're not needy. You're not selfish. It's connection. It's how men connect to their wives. And we talk about being authentic, but how do you stay authentic when something so important to you is absent? And the question that starts to go through your mind is, can I be happy in a marriage where there's no sex? So let's look at this through the lens of honesty, authenticity, and not shame or blame. One of my guys was talking about how he's dealing with this exact same issue. And his story is not unique. This is something that I'm seeing over and over because, like a lot of you, he's torn between being a good husband, but living in authenticity. He's trying not to pressure his wife. He's trying not to betray his own values, but he doesn't want to keep living in this loneliness, this pain, feeling unwanted, feeling invisible. And he's slowly starting to detach from this man that he once was. And what happens from this point is you stop being authentic in your needs, you start self-abandoning, and you stop honoring what matters to you. But let's go back to this idea of building a life of authenticity in a very complicated situation. Many of my coaching clients are in this very same situation. Maybe they haven't had sex in years. They're facing these really tough feelings of loneliness and rejection. And you start to wonder, can I be happy in my marriage if there's no sex? You feel like a roommate in your marriage. And if it's been a while since your wife has even been open to sex and you're doing the work, you've stopped sulking, you've stopped being passive aggressive, you've stopped raging, you've stopped chasing and begging, and still nothing has changed. And you start thinking, well, if I get emotionally healthier, the intimacy will come back. But what if it doesn't? Is it wrong that this matters to me so much? Can I be okay with this? Am I bad for needing what she clearly doesn't want to give? And that shame of craving something in your marriage that just doesn't seem to be there anymore has you in this stuck situation. You want to stay, but you don't know how to feel whole while staying. So let's start with noticing and ask yourself the question, okay, can I be happy in a marriage without sex? Now, the real question you're asking is, can I be happy while abandoning something deeply important to me? See, this isn't just about sex. It's about connection. It's about feeling seen, feeling wanted, feeling like you matter, feeling like your needs aren't always put last. So it's not just about whether you can live without a physical act. It's about whether you can keep living without yourself. So let's look at how to make sense of this pain. We have to stop feeling like the only option is either performative detachment or desperate begging. There's a different third option, and that is to live from truth. Our first step is just awareness. We have to notice where we're pretending, because in many cases we've been pretending, especially to ourselves, that we didn't care that much about sex. Now, you're not feeling that inside, but what you're doing is you're presenting that to your wife, because if you did present how much sex was important to you, then you dealt with consequences, right? So again, people-pleasing, walking on eggshells, and you start pretending that you don't care that much about sex to keep the peace. Maybe you decide, okay, well, let me focus on other things. But the truth is it matters. It matters deeply because you feel unchosen. You feel unseen. It's slowly eroding the way that you feel about yourself. So we start by noticing it. We name it without judgment. I'm not a pervert. I'm not a sex addict. I'm not a horn dog. Although sex addiction does play into a lot of these situations. But in this particular case, let's just assume that there's not an unhealthy addiction to sex. If you're dealing with compulsive masturbation or compulsive pornography, that may be gearing towards sex addiction. Totally different podcast for another time. I'm talking about healthy, regularly scheduled connection sex with your wife. So if you're in this situation, you value connection, You value shared affection. You value physical intimacy. But you notice where you're pretending. You're aware that I'm tired of pretending that I don't value connection and affection and physical intimacy. This is not about entitlement. It's about honesty, authenticity. We crave that affection. We crave that attention because we didn't get that. Remember the inner child. Remember when you were a little boy, you felt like a burden for wanting what you wanted. We'll explore those parts of you that felt abandoned, where you learned that having needs made you too much or asking for affection was unsafe. You may have never been hugged by a family member growing up. You may have had a mother who was emotionally distant or a father who was emotionally distant. But your earliest memories of relationships are of being ignored, dismissed, scolded for needing anything maybe. Something that made someone else uncomfortable. So of course now in your marriage, your nervous system panics when you have a need because that young part of you, that wounded self inside, that inner child still believes, if I express this, she'll reject me. If I want too much, she cuts it off. If I just stay quiet, be the good guy, maybe I'll be loved again. I'll earn that affection. This doesn't bring connection. It only brings resentment. Once you notice this and get curious, instead of shaming that pattern, just start asking yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I stand in my truth? What would it mean about me if I admit how much this matters? What if my wife never changes and I keep betraying myself forever? That last one is going to hit hard because that's the actual pain that you're avoiding, not the absence of sex, but the absence of self. So you have to reach in and dialogue with that inner child inside. Give him love, give him compassion, give him that affection, that connection that he always wanted but couldn't get. And then you connect to your higher power, divine guidance, your source of truth that blasts out all the false narratives and the false core beliefs that you have and is a source of truth and unconditional love. And you start to build a different part of yourself inside. You start to build this man who's not desperate trying to get sex. And he's not the withdrawn guy who stopped trying. He's the grounded, emotionally mature man who can say, babe, this matters to me. I don't need you to fix it. I have no control over that. But I'm not going to pretend that it's okay anymore. And then you start leading with truth instead of pressure. And what that'll do is that'll make space for you to come back to your own life, even when your marriage doesn't shift. Because what you'll realize is that I can't control her willingness, but I could control whether or not I'm abandoning my core values. And once you stop abandoning those, then you start healing. And as you dialogue with that inner boy inside, he's going to tell you the truth. You just have to listen. That's your core. That's your feelings. That's your true, authentic self right there, that little boy inside. And you listen. You have that dialogue. You dialogue with your higher power. And you say, now, God, whatever your belief system is, God, now that I'm going to stop abandoning myself, what is my next loving action? And so you may have a loving conversation with your wife. You don't blame her. You don't guilt her, lecture or shame or ramble on this long list of unmet needs. No, you just say, hey, babe, I realized I haven't been truthful to both of us. I've been pretending I'm okay with the lack of physical connection, but I'm not. I miss us. I miss you. I miss feeling wanted by you. I don't know what that means for us, but I need to speak it. I need to say it for me. Now, who knows? She may be open to that truth. She might start crying. She may initiate that night. She may not. Okay, but she will hear you. But more importantly, you hear yourself. See, you're not taking this stand against her, but you're taking a stand for yourself. That's what leadership looks like. You're setting the tone, taking the lead, but you're leading yourself. And then you have to check in. Check in with that little boy, with that higher power every day. Resist the old patterns of numbing or escaping or blaming. You just have to keep reminding yourself, my value isn't determined by her willingness. My worth, it's not up for debate. My needs are not wrong just because they're not met. And over time, you're going to start rebuilding your life around your own authenticity instead of tiptoeing around hers. Tough part of the question, can you be happy in a marriage without sex, is that it's not one size fits all. For some men, they can be. And for some men, there's no way. And only you can answer that question. And if by just me saying you can be happy in a marriage without sex, if that triggers you right now, I think that's telling you something very important. Because maybe you can be happy in a marriage without sex, but only if you're not abandoning yourself to make it work. If you can, and you feel that you're being authentic to yourself and loving to yourself in that situation, maybe you can be happy. But if you feel that being in a marriage without sex is self-abandonment, then that tells you something. And you got to listen, because that's your inner child telling you. Only you can answer that question if you can be happy in a marriage without sex. Only if you're not abandoning yourself to make it work. If you're not shoving down every craving, every longing, every ounce of feeling inside of you just to preserve the appearance of peace. Happiness isn't found in sacrificing what matters most to you. It's found in standing with yourself, no matter what's missing around you, and being honest, being at peace. So when you become more secure, you can be more honest with yourself, not betray yourself anymore. Because it's not really about sex. You're not really asking, can I be happy in a marriage without sex? You're really asking, can I still be me in this relationship? What's important to me? And you don't have to be ashamed of that. You don't have to vilify your wife or pressure her, but you do need to get honest about what matters most to you. You need to stop editing yourself just to survive in this relationship. And you do need to decide, do I want a marriage where I stay quiet or a life where I stay true? Now, you may not have that answer today, but you do need to start asking that question, because your healing begins the moment that you stop saying no to yourself. It's only a question you can answer. Hey, I hope this podcast helped you out. Take a moment and subscribe if you don't already, and give me a review to help other men find this podcast for healing, and share it with someone who you think may need to hear this. If you need help getting unstuck, some accountability, visit securehusband.com and set up a free 30-minute consultation with me. Just a conversation, no sales pitch. I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.